The U.S. declared war on Germany in April 1917 and were now effectively part of the Great War. The U.S. armed forces were made up of 200,000 men. Over the objections of many in the U.S. Senate, and contrary to the long-standing American tradition of maintaining a small volunteer army, Wilson asked for and received a large military budget and an army raised by conscription. In May 1917, the Selective Service Administration began registering for the draft of all men between the ages of 21 and 30. The first men were selected on July 20th and began appearing in training camps in September. They trained throughout the fall and began to cross the Atlantic towards France late in 1917. Nearly 1 million American troops arrived in France in May, June, and July of 1918. It was clear that they were sorely needed. The Italians had experienced a disaster in the fall of 1917, the Russians had left the war, and the Germans had mounted a last, desperate offensive in March of 1918.
November 11th, 1918. Dear Mary, today we have captured the German lateral railroad communication. It has taken us since September 26th to do this, but we achieved our goal in the end. I knew that training our troops was a good idea, rather than doing what the British and French wanted us to do, which was send them in immediately. Instead, I made sure they got experience in the trenches before they went into combat. I even set up training schools for my 5 army divisions. I did this all so my troops would fight under the U.S. Army, with the exception of Operation Michael in March. However, during Operation Argonne, I was able to create the Second Army, and I received equality with the French and British armies. The offensive wasn't successful at first, and it broke my heart to have so many of my men die, but this is war. Finally, today we have succeeded. Today the armistice will be signed. I still believe that we should continue to fight, but the Allies don't think so. But I am excited to see you again. I will be home soon. Love, John.
Dear Sarah, it's been a while since I've written to you. Everything has been so busy and chaotic. The glorious vision of the war that I had is completely opposite from what it actually is. The living conditions here are dreadful. I've never felt so filthy. I stepped in a mud hole the other night and went up to my waist in mud and didn't get to change clothes, and in fact I haven't changed yet. I haven't changed for over 2 months. We have to wear a gas mask at all times because the Germans continue to attack us with their poisonous gas as well as their machine guns. Every day we receive directions and new war tactics from General Pershing. He believes that the goal of the war is the total destruction of the enemy's military power. They have banned drinking from anybody in uniform in order to keep us in line. Many of us have caught illnesses like influenza and pneumonia due to the cold and unsanitary conditions that we have to endure in. Not to mention thousands of us doughboys have died from being sick or going over the top to fight. The barrage at the battle in Argonne Forest was the heaviest one we laid in France so far. I remember watching the infantry go over the top. Us doughboys are working as hard as we can and our army is as strong as ever. Don't worry about us too much, we'll be home soon. Well, I must go back to being on watch. I'll write once more the next chance I get. Until then, keep strong and tell the family that I'm doing fine. Love to all, Albert Smith.
In 1918, the German spring offensive pushed French and British troops backward all across the Western Front. The French and British withstood the German advance, and by August of 1918, the Americans, now thoroughly trained and at full strength, were ready to join in a concentrated attack. In hard-fought and brutal battles in the Argonne forest, American soldiers experienced intense machine gun fire, artillery bombardments, and poison gas, all the horrors of trench warfare. Fighting bravely, they achieved success almost everywhere they fought, though they never broke into the open to gain the huge chunks of land Pershing desired. Just a few months after American troops went into action, the war was over. The Germans had been reeling before the American troops arrived, but American input on the battlefield bowled them over. In the end, it was the presence of American soldiers, as much as their fighting process, that helped drive the Germans to surrender on November 11, 1918. So, did the U.S. fight a total war during World War I? We believe that the U.S. did fight a total war, despite the fact that they only joined towards the end of the war. During this time, conscription was introduced, and men were forced to volunteer for the army. Although not suffering as high casualties as the European countries, the U.S. had still faced a numerous amount of casualties, which contributed to the suffering on the home front. Due to these aspects, we can come to a conclusion saying that the U.S. did fight a total war.
the words and the words will beware.